Great. We have folks joining. Welcome, welcome. Really excited to have a group here today. We're just going to give it a minute as folks join. Excellent. Well, I am really excited to be here today. Welcome everyone here. My name is Laura Shifter. I'm a lecturer on education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I see some more people trickling in, which is great. Welcome everyone. I am also a senior fellow with the Aspen Institute, where I head up an initiative called This is Planet Ed. Welcome to this conversation on education now. So before we jump in fully to the conversation, I just want to let you know a little bit about Education Now. This is a great conversation series that we have going, and the episode that you'll see here today and all of our previous episodes are available on YouTube and Facebook. So encourage you all to check out all of the sessions that all of the conversations that we've had on Education Now, and really, really thrilled and excited to be with you all here today. We are going to be talking about how parents and caregivers and educators can talk about climate change with children. So we're really excited to be here today. We have a lot to get going and not a lot of time. But one of the first things I would like to shout out, especially as we are having this panel, is I get to be on a panel with two amazing women on International Women's Day. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to have this conversation today, and I'd love to welcome our guests. We have Anya Kamenetz here, who is an author, a journalist, and a senior advisor to Aspen Institute's This is Planet Ed initiative. This is Planet Ed is co-chaired by former Education Secretary John King and former EPA Administrator and former Governor Christine Todd Whitman. The goal of the initiative is really to empower the next generation to lead a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. And Anya and I are really excited. We're joining you here today from Aspen Ideas Climate in Miami. This is an event that's really about bringing together leaders from across the world to discuss how we can advance a whole of society approach to addressing climate change. We know that this can't just be done in people working in energy. This can't just be done by people working on environment. This is going to require all of us to step up and take action on climate change. And we're excited to be here having conversations on that. One of the things that's really important to this whole of society approach is going to be education. Anya and I had the opportunity this morning to hear from former Education Secretary John King, and he emphasized really the importance of talking about this issue with young people. He told us in a quote, "We owe it to them to make sure they are equipped with the skills and knowledge to tackle this challenge." And educators, caregivers, and parents are going to be central to making sure they have all of that support. I'm also thrilled that we are here with Zuzu Kadir. She is a junior at Beacon High School in New York City. And Zuzu is also an organizer with the organization Triage. It's a coalition of youth leaders and activists who are fighting for environmental justice. So welcome, Anya and Zuzu. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Great. So, I always kind of talk about this issue because I think it's so important from the get-go to recognize that climate change is a personal issue. We often talk about it or hear people talk about it. They'll talk about science, they'll talk about technical solutions, but the truth is, the reasons why we all care about it is personal. It's going to impact us as humans, and it's going to impact the things that we love and the things that we care about. I know that I had my own climate moment reading a UN report. I had spent all my time working in education. I read this UN report, and I remember looking at my three daughters and just realizing the world that they were entering, and that we could have the best education system in the world, but it really wouldn't matter if the full impacts of climate change took hold. And, really feeling the urgency to be a part of the solution is what drove and motivated me to work on climate issues, and thinking about building that better future for children and youth in particular is really what's motivating me on this. So recognizing the importance of connecting on the personal issues, which is ultimately what connects us all. I'd love for you all to share just a brief personal reflection about why this issue matters to you. And Zuzu, I'd love to have you talk first here.
All right. So I think it's a fact that climate change disproportionately affects people of color. And so I've seen how it's affected people in my community. And it's really motivated me to do the work, especially since I'm the next generation. We're going to be dealing with all of this climate catastrophes, all of the damage that these big fossil fuel companies and everyone else is causing. So yeah, I got involved in Triage about a year ago, and I think that's the people here also really motivate me. They really motivate me to do better. They motivate me to be better. So yeah.
Great. And Anya?
I'm so happy to hear that you were able to find that community. I mean, Laura, like I could talk about Katrina hitting my hometown right after my 25th birthday. I could talk about Sandy when I had a little baby in New York City and going up into a tower full of elderly people to do welfare check as a volunteer who assembled on the sidewalk and being the first person to knock on people's doors. Lately, I've been thinking about, especially here in Miami, that it's just such an incredible moment to be living through. And there's nothing else I'd rather be thinking about and working on with incredible people from all over the world. It is it's a huge challenge. It is terrifying, but it is so galvanizing and inspiring. And I learned something new every day.
Excellent. So Anya, I'd love to hear a little bit more, with This is Planet Ed. We recently conducted a survey with the organization Capita and Siena College, where we found that 82% of respondents, regardless of their background, agree that children and youth will be essential in fighting climate change, and that we have an obligation to empower them with the knowledge and skills to build a sustainable world. But right now there's a big gap. Only 49% of caregivers reported that they've talked about it with their children. And in schools, there's a lot of absence too. A 2019 poll showed that only 14% of teens felt like they learned a lot about climate solutions in schools. Why do you think parents, caregivers, educators, despite having concern about climate change, haven't really discussed it with children and youth?
Yeah, I mean, this was a statistic that's really, increasingly determined the course of my work over the last several months, because it's identical to the same poll questions that we did with NPR in 2019. We found the exact same gap for parents from 4 out of 5 who think this is important, but only half have talked about it. And the more I'm deeply diving into the reasons why, I realize they're manifold, right? Climate change is complicated, it's confusing, it's controversial, it is very, very scary. And there's so much anxiety that comes from adults because they also feel guilt, about addressing this with kids. And so they put it off because, older people, for all the right reasons, feel more responsibility to address climate change than younger people do. And yet it's younger people who are going to be experiencing it. And that difference in how it impacts us, to me, is the biggest reasons for this intergenerational silence.
Thanks. And Zuzu, reflecting on your own experience, I know your mom's a kindergarten teacher. How have you seen parents and caregivers and educators in your life either discuss climate change or not discuss it? And how has that impacted the work that you do?
Yeah, I really haven't seen anyone kind of talk about climate change, which kind of makes the work I do so important. I think that since COVID especially, there's kind of been a culture around parents of like kind of protecting your children from like anything bad in the world. And I think that's an issue with the climate movement, that people think that it's all bad. And it is. A lot of it is really horrible. A lot of it is really scary, but there's a lot of good things about it. There's a lot of hope, and there's a lot of actions that we can take to, create more hope. So I think that parents often think of the climate change situation as like kind of very one-sided, very just like bad, hopeless, nothing's gonna happen, we can't do anything. But it's really not. And in terms of the work I do, we actually at Triage, we started something last month. It's called Sapling Seminars. They're each little 2-hour seminar that teaches kids about certain aspects of climate change. Our last one was on New York politics. Our next one is going to be on organizing in schools to teach kids like the essential skills to really combating climate change in their own way. Yeah.
Excellent. And, picking up a little bit on what Zuzu said too, Anya, I know you've been working on a resource for parents and caregivers and thinking about this. What have you learned about how to start this conversation with kids, and how can we start it in a way that's not scary?
Yeah, thank you so much. And really excited to hear about what you're working on, Zuzu, and how we can help. I've come to realize that it's not so much that we need to figure out a way to make it not scary, is that we need to figure out a way to have a brave conversation, because the facts of climate change are quite scary. And the implications of it are scary. Now, with a very young child, it is enough to sort of deliver the basic realities. And then you need to think about what are the types of coping that you're going to rally and give to your kids to be able to share with them. So that means coping with emotions, strong emotions as they come up, sharing them honestly, calmly with your kids, and coping with action, figuring out ways that we're going to come together and be a part of the solution. You're never going to talk about climate change with kids without talking about millions of people are helping, millions of people are trying to make a difference. That is such an essential part of the message. And when we have relegated climate conversations to science class, or even if we have, or worse, when kids find out about it from the media where there's no context, it's all gloom and doom, that's when we're really giving up our moral authority as parents or even as teachers to put it in a context that's going to be meaningful for kids.
Really thinking about like how we can break this down, it seems like there's a big barrier to, just in full transparency. I think I had a lot of misunderstandings about climate change before I actually experienced my own climate moment. And then I forced myself to learn about it. And I feel like I've been to a lot of good schools, including Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I still had a lot of misunderstandings myself. I thought it was a far away problem. I thought it was something that was just for people in climate environment space to do it. But the truth is there's some things that we all need to know. And, the Yale Center for Climate Communications has really talked about some of these things. And there's an opportunity for us to help relay them to children as well, getting through the basics, an understanding that it's warming, that it's us, that it's happening now to people, and that it's solvable. And there's a real opportunity as parents. You don't have to be a climate scientist, but as parents, that you can break this down for children. Anya, can you help us with some knowledge of like the metaphors that can be helpful and how we can break down some of these messages to help build children's understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. I was part of a wonderful session with the National Science Foundation about a year ago, where we had some great climate scientists, Kate Marvell, Claudia Benitez Nelson, who are really skilled and practiced in breaking this down. And one of the things they said was, the metaphor of a heat trapping blanket, right? So the things that we do to get around, to make the things that we need to heat and cool our homes, that all produces CO2, and CO2 can surround the world. A little bit of it is okay, but too much of it, and the earth starts to get almost like a fever. So you understand that this is something that people are doing. We see that too much is too much. We see what types of activities actually contribute to climate change. And the other really important part, of course, is the impacts that we're feeling. And, unfortunately, almost anywhere you live, there is something you can point to that talks about this, whether you're walking around, the city in New York City, and why are they redoing the East River Park? Well, it's because of the bigger storms that are coming. Why didn't we have snow last winter? So there's so many different entry points. And then, just as I mentioned before, it's really, really important that this could be connected to, there are different ways to have the things that we need to get around. And these are solutions that don't contribute to the heat trapping blanket. And the more we do them, the better it is for the planet. So conserving our waste, conserving energy, using electric vehicles, using bicycles, walking, and helping kids feel like they can be a part of that solution.
Yeah, and really helping kids understand, the differences between like a sheet and a comforter. That's something that they can wrap their head around, right? And we're actually changing that material of the blanket. I love that.
I do want to follow on to say that there's also the older kids. And it's also really important that even if you don't know the answers to all of their questions, that's a really great opportunity to say, we can look this up together. We can find out what is the answer to your question. And so, especially with teens, you're not going to be explaining it to them in that very simplistic way. You're going to be responding to their questions and maybe even their anxieties, and hopefully keeping that line of communication open and saying, let's look it up together.
Yeah. And so actually that's a really important point. I think, Zuzu, there is a lot of misinformation out there. And when there's climate science silence in the home or in schools, young people will go to try and find the information out themselves. We just came from a panel where 3 young people that we work with had to go learn about it themselves. And there was an EdWeek survey recently that showed a lot of young people actually learn some or a lot from social media. 56% of the young people that they surveyed said they learned some or a lot from social media. What do you see as the potential benefits or concerns from young people learning a lot from social media? And how do you think parents and caregivers can really help young people understand how to evaluate the sources of information that they're getting?
Yeah, I think that social media is good in the way that it can kind of be used as a scare tactic and kind of motivates teenagers to actually jump into action. And I'm not gonna lie, I've kind of been victim to the misinformation on social media too. But I think the most important thing is that if you are passionate, and you should be, you need to go out and do the research yourself, but also not only do the research, but go and join an organization, because I feel like joining an organization will really help you kind of find a community of people who can teach and learn with you, rather than just learning from a random Instagram post. So I think there are a lot of benefits to social media. I think it's really beneficial for organizing. I think it's really beneficial for encouraging people to get involved, but I don't think it's going to be beneficial for building a community and learning together. I think that joining an organization is going to be really beneficial for them.
And Anya, do you have anything you want to add on the social media side of it, given the work and research that you've done?
We're starting a campaign of figuring out how to use messaging and how to help work with influencers to kind of get the good messages out. But I really do want to second Zuzu's point that the best conversations that you have about climate change are going to be with people that you know and people that you trust and people that you're working with. And so helping more kids connect to that, I think ultimately is going to be a great way to go.
So I want to follow up here. We're going to get to an audience question in a minute, but Zuzu, if there was kind of one thing that you would really think about that you wish parents, caregivers, and educators would do to support young people in building awareness on climate change, what would be that one thing that you would ask of folks to kind of do off the bat?
Yeah, I think that working in climate politics, especially so young, it can be often a very ageist environment, just because they know that young people can't vote, and they know that we can't really affect if they get reelected or not, effective, all of that. And so I think that just what we need from parents and caregivers is just support. We just need them to show that the climate change is something that they actually care about, something that they actually want someone to campaign for. They want bills passed in the government, and they just want actual action being taken. And I think that they can really support us in doing that, because as much power as the youth does have, there's a certain point where we don't have enough power to really just get legislators over the edge and kind of convince them. But yeah.
So I think Zuzu's building a little bit on this of creating space for power, for actual legitimate power for young people, especially in a part of this dialogue, which is so critical. And we have a question coming from a 6th grade social studies teacher who does teach a unit on climate change, but apparently indicates that she gets pushback from other students and parents that they say it's too depressing or too large of a problem for kids to feel like they can have an impact. Zuzu, I obviously see that you're having an impact in the work that you're doing. So I'd love to start with you to build on your answer that you just gave, but do you have any thoughts on strategies about how to empower young people to feel like they can be a part of the solution?
I think at least for me, my experience, I think I was really hopeless for a really long time and it was kind of all very depressing. But kind of starting small was really helpful for me. I started small. I started in my community. I started focusing on what I could do in my community to benefit the earth, to benefit the planet. And I feel like in terms of empowering young people, you just need to like show them that they are part of a community and that they can make change in their community. Because oftentimes you don't really see change in like the big earth and the big world and the country and the state. But you can see it in your community. And I think that's something that is really empowering to students.
Think globally, act locally. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Anya, you want to build on that?
Yeah, I have a specific research resource to share that I put in the chat, and I actually shared with a high school teacher not too long ago, which is an article by David Wallace Wells, who was really responsible for a lot of the climate alarm with his book, The Uninhabitable Earth. And he now writes for the New York Times. And last October, he published a piece arguing that, an incredible amount of progress has been made. And in quoting, thanks to astonishing declines in the price of renewables, a truly global political mobilization. So that's people like you, Zuzu, and serious policy focus like the IRA, we have cut expected warming almost in half in just 5 years. So while we are still facing down a scary future, incredible progress has been made, and it's been made because of people's awareness. And I think that's such a crucial message for young people to have, that they can be part of that solution in all three of those ways.
Yeah. And one thing that I want to add too, as a key component of it that we've seen and learned a lot about is, oftentimes people will say the solutions to climate change, it's about individual action, like turning off your light. But the truth is it's well beyond that. We need individual action and we need collective action. And students can just be really powerful messengers in their schools. We've seen students activate for action in Denver and get their school board to pass a resolution to transition their school district to 100% clean energy. That's happening in Salt Lake City, in Miami-Dade. It's happening all over the place. There was just a student that we worked with, Shiva Rajbandari, who felt like the school board wasn't listening to him in terms of his advocacy on climate action. He realized he was going to be 18 by the time that the election for the school board was. So he decided he would run for school board, beat the incumbent he was running against, and now has a seat as a senior, a fully participating voting seat on the Boise, Idaho school board. And they passed an 100% clean energy resolution. So there's really the opportunity to do things individually, but students can have a really powerful voice to do things collectively within their schools. And again, on Zuzu's point, acting local. So one question came in here too on when is the developmentally appropriate age to start talking about climate change, and any advice for early educators? Anya, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm working on a concept document about this with the Climate Mental Health Network. And we also just received a very small research grant to test with parents. And that's in the some of these resources. And I think some of the key concepts kind of connect to Montessori concepts. So in Montessori, they talk about care of self and care of environment, meaning that the room around you. And, very young children, I think there's a need to talk with them, depending on the situation, the specific local context, about various ways that extreme weather can impact their health. So that's one area. I think that's an important entry point. Then there's the entry point of simply love and care and concern for nature, for themselves, and for other people around them. And that's a very broad thing that we introduce in early childhood in a lot of different ways. We can definitely introduce it in terms of how we conserve resources, how we take care of plants and animals around us, how we take care of, don't waste water, don't waste energy. And so these are the ways that we start to try to inculcate these values, which is really what you're doing, as well as relationships and caring with very young children. We would hope that it's not very common, but it's becoming more common that a young child is going to actually experience a traumatic, disruptive weather event in their 0 to 5. And then we're sort of talking about trauma awareness. We're talking about how to make a child feel safe, even if they have to leave their homes. Maybe that's something that they're going to practice. They might look at a go bag. Again, this is depending on the context. I mean, I talked to an Australian climate psychologist about, we leave our boots by the door. We have our go bag by the door. That's how quick a bushfire can come. And that's something that even a 3-year-old needs to know about. So again, depending on the impacts, the practical safety knowledge, and then the values and the care, which is all centered around the message that we are going to keep each other safe and we're going to care for each other, which is what all kids need to know.
So, Zuzu, one question that we just got coming in here too is any advice on climate education in areas where politics might be complicated or there might be high levels of science denial? And I one of the questions that I want to ask or kind of layer onto this question for you is, obviously you don't speak for all young people, but for the young people that you work with, do you have any sense of any sort of hesitation or climate denial with the young people that you work with as well?
Yeah, I think that there's not really a sense of climate denial with the people I work with, maybe around just denying how fast it's coming just because they don't want to face the reality that it is coming and it is going to really affect our future. But in terms of schools, I think, again, kind of going back to the early education question, it's kind of putting climate change in the most basic terms, the least like politicized terms, I guess. Kind of just starting with like plants, animals, like water, like just very, very simple stuff needs to be taught. And then I think from that, you can kind of build on people's understanding and like kind of show them that climate change is real. And then from that, I think you can kind of build. I think it's just building very, very slowly. Yeah.
And Anya, anything to add on that point too?
I would hope that disaster response would be one of the most depoliticized entry points. And I know that that's a key demand, for example, for the Sunrise Movement in their Green Schools campaign that they're doing right now, as well as energy efficiency, right? There is so much money from the IRA to decarbonize schools, and that saves money because schools' energy bills are the second largest expense after salaries. So you don't have to talk about climate change to be part of the solution.
Yeah, and I think Katharine Hayhoe, who's a leading climate scientist too, who comes from relatively conservative communities, one of the things that she says that's so important to lead with shared values. There are certain things that we all value, whether that's a love for being outside, whether that's a love for our children, whether it's a love for cooking or fishing, or I even saw an article recently about how climate change is going to impact margaritas. So there's an opportunity for us to all connect on all of this stuff because climate change is going to impact the things that we love. So where things might be complicated, starting with the things that connect us can help bring people into the conversation as well. So kind of two final questions for you all. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there on climate change, and it's really easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom. But there's really an important aspect of emphasizing hope and hopeful messages and helping empower people to action. Zuzu, I'd love to start with you here. What is it that makes you hopeful for our collective future and our success in building a sustainable world?
Honestly, just like the organization I'm with. Currently, I'm in Albany. We took 150 kids up to lobby today. We did a youth day of lobbying. We trained about 150 kids to lobby. And we went to around 30 legislators within the New York State legislation. And we kind of convinced them to support this bill package that will really put New York on a green path. And so I think just the people I work with really give me a lot of hope because we really are doing the hard work and I feel like it will pay off. So, yeah.
Excellent. And Anya?
Laura, the more I've come into this work with you, the more hopeful I've gotten because I'm doing something every day to be part of the solution. I am not in charge of the outcome, but I'm engaged with people, like you said, that really care. And that's where I want to spend my life.
Excellent. And so to wrap up, we do have one question from an audience member that's looking for kind of tangible action that they can take. Do you have any advice on one concrete step that people can take right now that we can share? And Anya, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that you should go to This Is Planet Ed and think about how you can be part of the solution for decarbonizing your school, your local school. You have a school in your neighborhood, whether or not your kids attend it. The IRA has billions of dollars to help you do that. You can also look into what you can do in your home to save money, including even if you're a renter.
And Suzu, what's one
I'd
thing?
I'd say join an organization, whether it's Triage if you're a teenager or a young person, or it's another organization. Just like get in there and really do some tangible action, really just get out there and show people that climate change is real and it's coming and we need to do something about it.
And I'm going to just add one thing too. I would say talk about it. Please talk about it. Talk about why it matters to you. You know, we started with that discrepancy of how many people are concerned and how few people are talking about it. But ultimately, the way to lead us all to solutions is to start opening up dialogue about why this issue, why we should all care and how we could all contribute to solutions locally. So I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you so much to our guests, Anya, author, journalist, and senior advisor to the Aspen Institute's This is Planet Ed, and Zuzu, a junior at Beacon High School in New York City and an organizer with Triage. Thank you all so much.